Kathy, I'm an addict.
Hi, Kathy.
Our public relations policy is based on attraction rather than promotion. We need always maintain personal anonymity at the level of press, radio, and films. If anyone here represents a media agency, please contact Ray E. Our unity statement. The members of North Central Indiana area of Narcotics Anonymous welcome you to the second annual We Grow with Love convention. We would like to thank you for joining with us in this celebration of recovery. We are deeply grateful to Narcotics Anonymous and find great joy in being able to express our gratitude here with you, our family. In Narcotics Anonymous, we are certain when we come together to share our lives and our love with each other, a miracle happens. Our recovery takes hard work, courage, and commitment. Those are the things that carry us through as we seek the spiritual growth that comes from working the 12 steps. Never alone, we do this together and for each other, knowing that we need each other because more than anything else, we grow with love. The preface to the basic text begins, "The full fruit of a labor of love lives in the harvest, and that always comes in its right season. For us, our season has come." Would somebody please read Why Are We Here?
Hi everybody, my name's Sean and I'm an addict.
Hi, Sean.
Why are we here? Before coming to the Fellowship of NA, we could not manage our own lives. We could not live and enjoy life as other people do. We had to have something different and thought we had found it in drugs. We placed their use ahead of the welfare of our families, our wives, husbands, and our children. We had to have drugs at all costs. We did many people great harm, but most of all we harmed ourselves. Through our inability to accept personal responsibilities, we were actually creating our own problems. We seemed to be incapable of facing life on its own terms. Most of us realized that in our addiction we were slowly committing suicide, but addiction is such a cunning enemy of life that we had lost the power to do anything about it. Many of us ended up in jail or sought help through medicine, religion, and psychiatry. None of these methods was sufficient for us. Our disease always resurfaced or continued to progress until in desperation we sought help from each other in Narcotics Anonymous. After coming to NA, we realized we were sick people. We suffered from a disease from which there is no known cure. It can, however, be arrested at some point and recovery is then possible.
Thanks, Sean.
I'm going to introduce the first speaker. When I read our unity statement, talked about our recovery taking hard work, courage, and commitment, and the spiritual growth we gain here. Our first speaker is not only a good friend of mine, but I've gained a lot of spiritual strength, courage. I've learned some spiritual principles of acceptance, tolerance, patience. I've learned a lot from this addict, and you'll find out why. This is Betty T.
Hi, I'm Betty. I'm an addict.
Hi, Betty.
I'm really tired. I spoke at university about a month ago, but it was much easier because I was wide awake. And this is trying to get my mind frame set because I'm trying to talk about illness and recovery. And I asked people, what do they want to hear about? And some people said, well, we want to hear more about your illness, or we want to hear about medications. My illness is that I'm living with the AIDS virus, and I've been positive for probably about 5.5 years. I think that most of us probably know what AIDS does to people. I do AIDS volunteer work now because I'm on disability, and I've seen AIDS rip people apart and really reduce people. Human beings to just skeletons with no life in them. I've learned a lot from those people, and it's helped me grow in my recovery too. It teaches me about living life on its own terms and taking a day at a time. not planning a lot of things in ahead and making too many commitments and not being able to stick to the commitments, but you know, just making commitments that I know that I can stick to. As far as medications go, I don't know. I'm on some medications now that are not addictive and they're not mood and mind altering. I was prescribed a medication once by my doctor because I was having a semi-nervous breakdown, and he thought it would stimulate my appetite. And I called probably about, I don't know, every addict I know and talked to him about the medication, and decided that at that point it wasn't really necessary, and flushed it down the toilet. So that's really all I have to say on medications. You know, I don't believe in sneaking. I don't believe in hiding. I don't believe in collecting tokens when you don't deserve them, because I've worked very hard for my recovery, and I've stayed clean, and I've done it without the use of drugs. And that's about all I can say about medications. As far as living with the disease itself in recovery, it's taught me a lot. I mean, I think it's enhanced my recovery. It's made it harder, but it's also enhanced it. It's made me closer to a lot of people. It's made me realize the preciousness of the gift of life and what's really important and what's not. You know, things that seemed so important when I first got into recovery, things that I wanted to get, material things or this or that aren't as important anymore, because I meet people, and you know, people aren't things. And if I can help a person, whether it be going and sitting by their bedside, or taking them over some food, which I just did last week to a real good friend of mine who's pretty sick right now. And in recovery, you know, talking to people on the phone, getting together with them for sponsor-sponsee meetings, stuff like that. That's what's important to me today. Trying to apply the spiritual principles, I guess. And sometimes that gets hard when personalities fly, but when it comes right down to it, you know, this is life or death for me and for most of us. And I try to get humble enough when I believe I've hurt someone to call them and apologize. Or if I see them, do it to their face. Because I just believe in life a lot today, and how important it is to be honest and open-minded and willing to do what it takes. And if I don't do those things, then I don't believe that I am fully doing my 100% that I can do in my recovery. The hardest that it's been for me, I think, has been not just me and what I've gone through, because I haven't had any major physical things happen. I've dropped about 20 pounds, and I got delirious with a fever about 4 or 5 nights ago, which I don't remember. My husband told me about it the next day. He said that my eyes were rolling back in my head and I was babbling, and I thought, God, and I used to pay money to buy drugs to do this, you know. But the hardest it's been, I think, has been when it comes to my family, my daughter, my husband, my close friends, my family of my close friends. you know, the questions play over and over in my mind. Am I going to see my daughter graduate? You know, am I going to see my grandkids? Am I going to see this? Am I going to see that? That's why it's so important for me to be honest and open with people, because I don't know how long I'm going to see those people. And when I meet someone, or when I establish a good bond of friendship with someone, I try to keep that going to the best of my ability, and then I guess the rest is on them. But it's real important, because I don't know how much longer I'll be around to see these people. And that's been the hardest. The hardest is watching the pain in other people's eyes. You know, every time I get sick, watching my daughter get scared, you know, thinking, oh, mommy's getting sicker now. My daughter's father died 5.5 years ago, her biological father. And now, like, she's faced with losing her mother, and that's been real hard for me to deal with and to think about. With that, again, I just make the most of what the time I have with her. You know, it's not easy being a parent. I still get mad and yell and scream sometimes and holler, but I try to remember too that we need to create some real precious memories right now, because tomorrow could be too late. 2 years down the road from now could be too late. You know, and it's the same way in my friendships. Tomorrow could be too late. 2 years down the road from now could be too late. I might be gone then, or the other person might be gone then. And one of the things that really makes me a little upset, you know, I talked to some people about the disease that I have, and people say, well, you know, we're all going to die. We know that. We're all going to die someday. And I feel that's real invalidating for me, because I know that. But when somebody has an illness that threatens the quality of life, it's like their lifespan is put right in front of their face. I'm not saying that there can't be miracles, and you know, there are long-term survivors of the disease that have been living with it for 12 and 13 years. A good friend of mine passed away a few months ago that had been living with it for 12 years. But some people just know they're probably going to be around, you know, to enjoy their retirement, or to retire, or to make it through college, or whatever. And I don't know that, so I have to make the most of the time that I have right now, today, this minute. Excuse me. And a lot of that comes down to taking time out for me, and that's really hard. It's really hard because I want to help everybody I can. The day before I came down with the fever and got real sick and my lymph glands got real swollen is when I took the food over to my friend who is still real sick. And she has really no idea what she has, but she's in the last stages of AIDS, and so it could be anything, and it could be just something that I picked up from her. But it's real hard for me to set limits for myself, you know, and that's something that I work on a lot with my sponsor. And I think that's hard for a lot of people, you know, set limits. I mean, here at the convention, you know, since we've been here, there have been a few of us that have been doing tons and tons of work. Out picking up cigarette butts, you know, posting signs, laying down cans all over the place, doing registrations when it's, you know, not even really our job. And I don't know, we just have to get authoritative enough to say, look, this is not my job, I will not do it, and if it falls apart, it does, but it's not on me, put it on the person it goes on. But that's a real hard thing to do. It's real hard. I've developed some, the real good part of my recovery is that I have developed some very, very close friendships. When my husband and I first started telling people about my status, there were, I don't know, maybe a couple people, 2 or 3 people, that walked away from us for a while, and that really hurt, because I thought of, any people that should be open-minded in the world, it should be recovering addicts. They've been there, they've done that. They had just a higher risk as I did. What makes it any different? Until I figured out in my mind that, it's the disease that they're scared of, it's not really me, and they're just not educated. And once I got past the anger and the hurt and the disappointment, we were able to get information and take it over to them. And we developed friendships. But that was the real hard part. But I've developed some very, very close friendships in recovery. And we talk to each other about everything, like we're each other's ghost officers. It's just become really, really wonderful. It's the bonds of friendship that grow deeper. And, we're not jealous of each other. And it's just unconditional love. I think that's what this disease, both diseases, but more so, when I found out about my HIV status, it made the unconditional love thing that much more important. When it comes to friendships, I don't have to like everybody, and I don't like everybody in recovery. When they come to the tables, I respect each person as an addict, and they have a right to share. But that doesn't mean that I have to like everybody. But the people that I am close to, we have a very strong unconditional love for each other. And they give me room to mess up, and I give them room to mess up without shame and lectures and, all that other stuff. And that's just been wonderful. It's something I've never had my whole life. And now I'm getting it. And I'm starting to do things now that I've always wanted to do. And this one guy that did a workshop in South Bend a couple years ago said that it's really too bad, but for most people, it takes a diagnosis of a terminal illness for them to do the things that they've always wanted to do in life. And that, is basically what happened to me and to a lot of people that get terminal illnesses. I think it's important that while you have the time, to do what you want to do. Whatever it is, just go for it and do it. So important. It's just so important. Come on, Margie, I'm drawing a blank. This is your thing. There's been a lot of hard times since I've been clean. Not just with living with the virus, but we've been through a lot in this area. My husband and I have been through a lot in our marriage. We've been through one bankruptcy. We're going to go through another one. We were homeless for a while, and there was the chairperson who seems like so tough, but has got the biggest heart in the world. Yeah. Let us come stay at her house until we found another place to go. And she has that unconditional love. I feel that from her all the time. And we've become, just the best of friends, and I can tell her these horrible stories that I don't tell anybody else. And never get judged, and that's okay. And there's another addict sitting in the front row that called each other all times of the day and night. 3 o'clock in the morning, 8 in the morning, 2 in the afternoon. It's just really great that I have that with people today. Members of my family that are in recovery now. You know, really great. They went through a hard time not too long ago. They went through a relapse and lost everything. But they're back and they've got over here clean now. And I admire, I admire them for coming back and talking about it. That was just really a neat experience for me. Every time I see that, it makes me stronger and it makes me more able to deal with the disease of HIV. And I used to make jokes about it, when I was in active addiction. I used to make jokes about AIDS because I had never seen what AIDS really did to people. I never saw how it tore up their lives and how some people get totally abandoned by their families. And I remember reading one time about this nurse who was sitting with a 16-year-old boy who just died from AIDS in the hospital, and he was also a homosexual, and she called to tell his mother that he had died, and his mother's response to her was, "The day my son told me he was a homosexual, he was no longer my son, so why should I care about this?" And so this is real, and this is stuff that I used to make jokes about that just isn't funny to me anymore. And I get real defensive when I hear people making jokes about it or stigmatizing it. That's the other thing, is the stigma that's put on people with AIDS is really horrible still. And there's no excuse for it. There is no excuse. There's a lot of education out there. There's a lot of material out there. If people are ignorant about it, it's because it's their own fault. It's because they don't want to learn about it. And there are people like that. I have met people in my city that I live in now that are like that. And I just don't tell them about myself. I would, but I'm afraid for my daughter. Because I've seen what happened in the city I live in with a woman whose anonymity got blown, and her children in school were very picked on by the teacher and also by other kids, running around saying to her children, "Ha ha ha, your mom's gonna die." And I don't want that happening to my daughter. She's living with enough, and she doesn't need any more. So the stigma that's still on the disease, people think that you can get it from this and that and this and that, and, drinking out of the same can, and I mean, God, if that was true, all my friends would be infected by now, I guess I've been lucky that I've had not a lot of direct shame put on me. Not a whole lot. I did have the remark made to me by one of my sisters, "Well, that was the choice that you made, so people gotta live with their choices." And at the time I got the disease, I was in active addiction, and powerless to me means that I have no choice. And so it's not like I did something and said, "Oh God, I hope I get AIDS from this." Today I have the choice, though, I guess, about how much I let those statements affect me. They affect me in a good way today, because they get me motivated, they get me angry, and my anger today can be put towards motivation instead of revenge. And I think that, there's a big difference there. I always wanted to have it be revenge before. Well, let's go do something horrible to this person. Let's have this friend of mine that would just love to to take some of his blood and go shoot it into a nasty doctor in the area. But I try to use my anger in a positive way to try to get people motivated, ignorant people. I thought she was coming up here to cut my head off or something. blood, oh no, I already died. But I've been lucky with the friends that I have now, like I said, that I haven't had the direct shame put on me, because I've seen what that has done to people. My husband and I had a very, very special friend who wasn't an addict, but he wasn't in recovery, but he died about 1.5 years ago. And we were at his house one night, and somebody went by and egged his front door. And it was right after he had gone on the news and gone public. And it was terrible. And this man probably gave me more hope than any person I've met, I think, in my life. 2 weeks before he died, another friend of mine with AIDS had a Christmas party, and we were there. And he showed up, oxygen tank, his mother by his side and all, to sit and be able to be with people and make the most of the time he had left, instead of trying to isolate and feel sorry for himself and get everybody to feel sorry for him. He made the most of what he had left, and that's what's important to me. And he was just a wonderful man. He helped people. He gave away, when he got his life insurance settlement, he gave away money to people that needed it. He just truly gave out. And on the back of his memorial service brochure that we got when we went to his memorial service, it said that, his final wish was for the world to give and receive unconditional love. And that statement meant a lot to me. Sometimes I forget that, and I have to get out that little pamphlet and read that. And that applies not only to illnesses, AIDS, whatever, but it also applies to recovery, I think, too, a lot. And it can take away that stigma. The unconditional love takes away the stigma. People with AIDS are already we are fighting for our lives physically. And when we have any stigma put on us, it makes us start fighting mentally. And it's a lot harder to fight mentally than it is to fight physically. It's just a lot harder. Because I know if I'm sick and I sit around and I think about it and I dwell on it and I just get all worked up over it, I get sicker. But if I can just take each moment at a time and do what I can, I get well a lot faster. And that's what's really important for me. And it's the same with life and recovery. If I can just live each moment at a time, or one day at a time, instead of planning things months in ahead or whatever, I do a lot better. I do a whole lot better, and I feel a whole lot better, and a lot less stressed, a lot less rushed. I've been getting into doing a lot of service work lately, and that's really, really good for me, actually. That's gotten me a lot closer to people, and it's taught me more about unconditional love for people. You're in service work, you learn about unconditional love. It's neat because people in service work, bond together real close. Even if we have differences of opinion at area or whatever, we still bond very close, and that's been real good for me. And I've been able to give back some of what I so freely given. that's another thing that I strongly believe in. You know, I took and took and took from NA for so many years that I finally figured it was time I started giving back what I had received. And that's why I started getting into service work, so I could do that. For me, that's important, you know. Some people aren't in the space to do that, and that's okay. But for me, it's, you know, I gotta do it, and I gotta do it now while I can, and I gotta make a difference what I can. And it's important for me, instead of sitting back and complaining and moaning about what's going on in the area, to get in there and voice my opinion and try to change what I can and learn why this is going on. And that's just real important for me too. Okay, there's my plug for the service work. So I don't really know a whole lot more to say about it, except that it has enhanced my recovery. There are some days that I do get really down about it, and it's usually around the days when friends of mine start to get sick. It's usually around the days that a friend of mine that I've been real close to has died, and I've lost quite a few friends in the last year and a half. I don't know, in the last year and a half there's been a lot of friends that I've lost to the disease of AIDS, and those are usually the days that I get down, you know, because I see what happens to other people. And like with my friend, I have a couple friends, one friend who's real sick, who's a single mother that has 2 kids. I see what it does to her kids, and I know how she feels. And I have another friend, and they're a couple, and they both have AIDS, and they have 3 kids. And I know how they feel. And you want to talk about courage, and you want to talk about strength, and people that don't feel sorry for themselves, you go talk to those people. And you'll learn a lot about courage, and a lot about strength, and a lot about how to survive in the world, and how to let go of the pettiness, you know, of everyday problems, and how to do what's really important. So, I don't know, that's about all I have. It's just, you know, unconditional love. That's what I try to give, and that's what I'm learning how to receive, and learning how to give. So, that's all I have, and I know Margie's dying to share. So, that's all I have.
That's what it says here. Introduce our second speaker. I gotta share this little story about our second speaker here. Might have heard Betty mention, when I started coming to meetings, our second speaker was there, and I admired her for being so cold, because I thought it was really cool. I thought, I like that girl. But the thing about her is she wouldn't let anybody in, you know, and the whole time, the years I've been going to meetings, I saw her, you know, stay away from me. Whereas people tell me today with Betty, they say, well, I'm afraid to get close to Betty because Betty's going to leave us. And Margie wouldn't let anybody get close to her, so we have opposites here. But today we have these same 2 ladies sitting up here in exactly the same space with acceptance. Whereas a couple years ago, they were both at 2 different ends. And I've seen so much change in both of these 2 people that it's a miracle. This girl here, the one that wouldn't let anybody in, I went to a meeting a few months ago, 30, 40, 50 people were sitting around, couldn't even speak at the meeting because they were all crying because this girl was in the hospital. She is a living, walking, breathing miracle to even be here today with us. This is Margie L.
See, there you go already. You can make me cry. I'm Margie, I'm an addict.
Hi, Margie.
And I'm real nervous. Real nervous. This is a real touchy subject for me. I was telling my sponsor that I've got this fear of being in front of a bunch of people and telling my story, and I told her where I thought it stemmed from, and she told me, well, maybe that's a good opening, you know, and I was born with diabetes. Got juvenile diabetes, and they didn't find it till I was 8 years old. And when they found it, I was pretty much dead. You know, at that time alone, it was a miracle that they got me to the hospital and got me back under control. I can remember I was in 3rd grade and I had an insulin reaction at school, and the teacher acted like she had never seen anything like that before. She lost all contact with what she was doing, and she pulled me out of the class and sat me at her desk. And this reaction just wigging out, and the focus was put on me. And I was made center of attention. And ever since that day, I had a real fear of people, speaking in front of people, being focused. I can remember in junior high, I would take an F before I would get up in front of class and read a report to class, because I had a fear of people, afraid that people were going to laugh at me, because that's what happened when I sat in front of the class, in front of the kids. I remember the day my mom took me to the doctor and they discovered the diabetes. My mom was crying and everything. The doctor had told her what was going on, and she started bawling, and I had never heard of it. You know, I just seen my mom was upset, and I broke out into tears. The day they put me in the hospital, they put me on insulin right away. And I had to learn how to give my own shots at 8 years old. And I remember when I was going through the classes to learn this, I thought it was cool. You know, man, this is really neat. This is like, I get to play the doctor, you know, and they'd let me practice on them and stuff until I was brave enough to do it to myself. And I thought it was really cool even after I left the hospital and went home. Until I was home for about a week, still giving myself shots. The reality set in that something's not right. It was fun for a little while. It was a game. I remember going through school. My mom, she's a very loving person. A lot of people that's met her can tell you so. She was doing what she thought was best for me and looking after my welfare. But I lost my childhood in that, because I wasn't allowed to do things that other kids did. I wasn't allowed to eat candy. I wasn't allowed to be out of my mom's sight, afraid that something would happen and she wouldn't be there to take care of me. I can remember in elementary school having to walk home from school at lunch break. And my mom was working, so she would have the next door neighbor make my meals for me. Mom would have a maid and she'd warm them up for me for lunch. And I had to do this on a daily basis. Every day, walk home from school, miss recess, go back to school, and just go straight back to class. And I hated my mom for a long time for that. A couple years of it, I started rebelling against everything that was being done, the way she was taking care of me. And I grew up with two older brothers that are practicing
young addicts that's in denial deep. The rougher the crowd was in school, the more attracted I was to them. And I got around the wrong crowd, and just to fit in, I started using. And after a while I liked the feeling. It wasn't just to fit in anymore, but I didn't think I had a problem. Everybody was doing it. It was cool and it felt good. I didn't have to. I can remember my brothers taking me to school and getting me high on the way to school. Or I'd walk to school getting high, or have a bottle of whiskey in my pocket. Being a diabetic, I'm supposed to follow a diet, take my insulin like I'm supposed to. I quit taking my insulin because I wanted to control what was going on. I didn't need the shit. I couldn't accept it. I just could not accept the fact that I had to be on insulin the rest of my life and take these shots. So I'd get buzzed on the way to school and then get the munchies and stop at Strauss Pies and buy a cream-filled Long John and a Mountain Dew for breakfast. And then I'd usually go the rest of the day without eating. But when I wasn't taking insulin, my sugar was running sky high, so I didn't need food anyway. As my addiction progressed, it wound up to where I'd be in the hospital once a month. And I can remember at one time it was once a month for over a year, laying in my deathbed every time. And I don't know how many comas I've been in, but some of them was for 2 or 3 hours, some of them was for a couple days, some of them was for 5 minutes, But every time I pulled out of the coma, I said that prayer that every addict says, God, get me through this and I'll never do it again. He always got me through and I was right back out there, but I still didn't see a problem. I remember, I think it was my 9th grade year of school. I went out partying all night one night, and my mom still had the blinders on. She couldn't see that I was using. And I came home one night, the next morning, just still fucked up, and a friend was with me, and I made this girl promise me she wouldn't tell my mom that I was using. And my mom started questioning her because I lay down on the couch and passed out, and what this girl didn't realize is I was laying there dying, and she's telling my mom, no, I wasn't using. My mom didn't know what the problem was, so she started going through my purse and found my stuff. She called my doctor, and I had a cold at the time, and she told my doctor told me she was taking me to the doctor to see about my cold. And we got there and there was nothing mentioned about a code. She told him I was doing drugs and everything, and the man just happened to know the drug doctor, and he put me in 2 Northwest because they didn't have Renaissance or anything like that at the time. And I went through probably 2 months of that, and they were going to send me to Lutheran General up in Chicago. And I was the good kid all the way up there. And I got there, and they wanted to keep me, and my mom was going to leave, and I said, you're not leaving me. There ain't nothing fucking wrong with me, and I'm not staying here. She started talking to this other doctor, and he started asking her if I was crazy, if I had ever tried to harm myself or others or any of this, and she said no. And he said, well, he said, she's not crazy and I can't force her to stay here. And I just got a big smile on my face and looked at Mom and said, you ready to go home? And she had to take me home. And when I got there, she told me I had a choice, either to call the doctor and see what I could do about getting back into treatment, or she was putting me in a girls' school. So I called the doctor. He said, well, because the doctor that was sending me to Lutheran General, I called him everything but a white man before I walked out the door. I called the doctor, and he said that he didn't think he'd take me back after everything I called him and the way I was acting. He said, but he'd call him and see what he could do. And I lit up, You know, I just lit up and I told Mom, you know, I just sat there thinking, he won't take me back. And if he won't take me back, she won't force me to go into girls' school. It wasn't a minute later the phone rang and it was my doctor. He said, I don't believe it. He said, but he's willing to take you back with open arms. I'm like, fuck, you know, and I just looked at Mom and said, you're ready to go. And she took me back up there, and I grew a good relationship with this doctor the longer I was there. But like Kathy was saying, when I first came around, I didn't let anybody in. And I'd go to treatment every day. I wouldn't open up. I wouldn't talk. They ended up telling me I was manipulative, and I sat on the fence a lot. And they kept me an extra week of treatment and kicked me out the last day of my extra week and told me I wasn't going to stay clean. That's at 14, 15 years old. And to prove them wrong, being the good addict that I am, I stayed clean on resentment for almost a year. And when that year was up, it was time for me to go celebrate and prove, you know, I did it. You know, I did it. Going on through the years, I never felt with my disease, with the diabetes, that anybody would want to be with me, that nobody could love me. I wasn't worth loving. How could you love somebody so damn unhealthy? And I never loved myself, you know, I guess that's a big thing. I never learned to love myself. Every relationship that I was in was abusive in some way. But that's what I was attracted to because that's what I felt like I could get. You know, that's what I deserved and that's all I would ever get. And I was in and out and in and out and in and out of the program. And I finally met a man that was in the program. And I say I owe a lot of my recovery to him. No, he's not the one that kept me clean, but he walked me through a lot of shit. He got me to open up. He taught me that I was lovable and that it was okay to love. Things in that relationship didn't work out because I was learning these things, but Margie still wasn't dealing with the diabetes. She wasn't taking care of herself. He was dealing with abandonment issues at the time, and he thought I was going to die on him, so he had to get out. I don't hold nothing against this man today. I still love him with all my heart. He's a damn good person. Kathy was talking about me being in the hospital. The 26th of July will be a year that I went into the hospital. Me and a group of friends went up to a fundraiser dance up in Kalamazoo, and I hadn't really taken care of myself all day that day. I probably hadn't taken care of myself for about a week, actually. And we went up there, and coming home, it was really late. It was probably about 5 o'clock in the morning. All I could say to the person that was taking me home is, I'm cold. You know, when I get home, I'm just going to go upstairs and turn the heat on and go to bed. I'm really tired. He got me home, and my mom found me 36 hours later. The air conditioner was on. I was stripped. Evidently, I had gotten really warm and turned the air and stuff back on, and I had slipped into a coma. And some friends got worried because they knew they had dropped me off, but nobody had heard from me for 36 hours, and it's not normal for people not to hear from me for that long. My mom came over when she found me. My eyes were rolled behind my head. My eyes were bulging out. They were black. You couldn't see any white. And the only thing that kept me alive was my body temperature dropped to 80 something. My kidneys collapsed on me. Just about everything collapsed on me. They got me to the hospital and they didn't think there was any hope. That Friday night meeting Kathy was talking about, a bunch of addicts held that meeting in my honor, basically. And one addict was telling me that she went into the non-smoking meeting, and it was a candlelight meeting that night, and my name was mentioned in that room, and the candle blared. And she said she knew it was me. She said she knew it was me there. She told me to come on in. The candle stayed blared until the meeting was over. And the next day I woke up. I never really knew how many people I had in my life that really cared today. But from what I understand, between my family and my friends and people in the program that I just talked to, that aren't really friends, but we associate, took up the hallways, 2 waiting rooms. They took up all the space they had for people in coronary care. There's 3 people in particular that I grew to love, that were there. They dedicated their time to be there the whole time I was in the coma. One of the friends has problems himself. He needs to be on oxygen and stuff, and he was there every day, all day, all night. Another guy, he was moving to Pennsylvania, He took a week off of work to be there. He canceled his plans for Pennsylvania that weekend to be there. He questioned the doctor because he wanted to know what was going on. It was really good to wake up and see people in recovery there. My friends hadn't abandoned me. That's that unconditional love. There were prayers going out as soon as I could walk. When I woke up out of the coma, I couldn't walk. They told my parents if I woke up, if I made it, I would be a vegetable, I would be blind, and I wouldn't be able to walk. By the grace of God, I've got my eyesight. I'm not a vegetable. And I didn't walk at first. But I wasn't going to give up either. And a lot of people knew. They kept saying, man, she's a mean bitch. She ain't going to give up. She's going to fight. And I did. I fought it all the way. When I woke up and found out what went on, I wanted to live. And I knew, and I still know today in my heart that was my last chance. I've learned to accept the diabetes from this. Problems I have, the physical illness, only I can take care of. I've got my friends' support, their love. I've got a bunch of mothers. You know, and sometimes I really get pissed off, but then after I stop and think about it, I know they do it because they love me. I've never had that before outside of my mom. My mom, that's it. As soon as I was able to walk, I had the doctor write me a pass. And I went to my Friday night home group meeting. And there was a guy there that after the meeting, he ran up and gave me a hug. He said, "Girl, I was 120 miles away and I heard about it." That was from people from different areas in NA. People telling their parents that go to church and spreading it through. My family taking it to church and spreading it wherever. I used to hate God. I used to blame God for my diabetes. And I never could understand why he gave it to me. I still don't, but I don't need to know that today. Everything happens for a reason. Today I'm grateful to my higher power, you know. Everything that happens to me anymore, I try not to say that something's good or bad. Everything in my life today is a lesson and I learn and grow from it. For a long time, I just went to meetings. And that was it. That was enough to me. Being clean was enough. That's all I could do. But it's just been the last couple of months I've just been in this funk and don't feel like I'm going anywhere. You know, I just got back in that spot again. Couldn't figure out what the hell it was. Couldn't figure it out. Finally got a sponsor, man, and started working the steps. And that was my fear. I've got to take a look at Margie today. There's a lot of things that I've got to learn to accept that I never thought I could. You know, and some things that I've done, people have disagreed with. And I thought I had lost some friendships over it. Some very close friends. And all I could do is give them people their space. And let them deal with whatever they had to deal with. And today I believe that everything's gonna be okay. I love them people today. I don't know a lot of you guys, but you're all just like me. You know, we all share one common disease. Some of you guys may have other illnesses, and some of you just may be addicts. But we can all relate in some way. You know, they are all deadly diseases. They all kill. And we have to learn to accept them and work on us to stay alive. And without you people, and a few very special people, and my higher power, I know I wouldn't be sitting here today. That's all I got. Can I go home now? No, I'm okay now. I'm cold from being nervous.
Before we open up the floor for sharing, I need to remind everyone that you're being taped. If you do not wish to be taped, please let me know so we can turn the machine off.
talked to him in the hospital, and she accepted the phone call. But then when I got off the phone, I felt so much better about myself because she made me realize I was not the cause of my mother being sick, you know. That I was in treatment, that she had the heart attack, they let me out to people to go see about her, and I'm you know, saying see about her. I couldn't really answer that. But why? You know, and after some people went to see her with all the teeth and shit hooked up to her, you know, and I'm sitting there 2 years before my husband passed away, and I'm saying, not again. I can't go through this again, you know. But she came out of it okay. And it was kind of ironic because 2 weeks before I had planned a trip to go see her for Mother's